truth be told, is that coherence is everything. And when we talk about coherence or decoherence, a decoupling or incoherence, not to be discernible or understandable on any sort of scale, or at least broadly, to be able to coherently communicate the model with a factual idiom that's based on precise locations or codes of energetic meaning that systematically, mimetically, in sequence, ties back into and feeds back into a main hub. So the issue here is that the incoherent, those who have not reached any sort of level of idiom communication mastery, for instance, those who are making big bucks in software sales, IT, coding, to say that the top coders that I've talked to up in the San Francisco Bay Area, saying that no one really knows but a select few people how the internet functions or what it really is all about in the first place, the World Wide Web, DARPA, ARPA, why it functions, how it functions. It's definitely harkening back to non-Euclidean spherical mathematics. It's definitely using a sort of algorithmic binary code that we estimate as yes, no, maybe, probably, probably not, how the sequences formulate this certain verb and pronoun transaction that creates an actionable, coherent quality through systems logic. This is every language, this is every bit of communication, and this is how the field around us has to exchange through transaction information as currency, right? So coherence is everything, because when you are placing figures, a pattern, a shape, that happens to be a translocation of a certain individual that is upholding a certain ideology that shouldn't be an ideological thing, it should be principles. The problem herein lies is that the system doesn't kick back to, it doesn't reset, it doesn't revert back to pure principle. In fact, when you break down to the very coherent constituents of what is occurring here, disruption, incendiary mechanisms, creating chaos, disharmony is rewarded. To repeat these cycles, when we look at 3,000 to 4,000 years, times 3, and then a leveling out in an area of flux that exists 2,500 years or so assumed in between the transitioning of these stages, or you could say there's 4 and even 5 phases within a half cycle. And we're talking about, why is this relevant? We're talking about proximity, we're talking about energy distribution, and we're talking about a time signature where we just seem to fall into that. And we think we're the event, but we are expressing that event. And what we are expressing is the fact that we are not coherent, that the people who are put in charge of academics, the people that are placed in power positions politically, meaning religiously as well. You have to include religion in, like John Locke, good luck. You tried to separate church and state in such a way that was going to keep an integrity in the institution and allow more breathing room supposedly to the and then we got the Dewey Decimal System and all the things that are tied back into that sort of effort that was done on the veneer, on a cursory scale. That wasn't the real focus or the real cause ever. It was to create conflict. It was to capitalize on creating entropy. That's what people end up doing. You have to look at their fruits and see how they were taking a coherent thought, pure principle, looking at the systemization and how the firing pattern should take place, the deviation points from those pure principles, and the fact that what's happening is there's a big ruse, okay, that is supposed to gloss over the fact that purity doesn't exist here at all. So if you don't have a pure state, then therefore you cannot have non-Euclidean spherical mathematics, John Dee's hieroglyphic monad, that harken back to the Fibonacci, that says this is not a zero, this is a spherical singular unit, an entity that is all-encompassing. You no longer have God. You no longer have the pure state. You no longer have phi or phi, or the Fibonacci sequence, starting out with an assumed totality. You only have renditions and versions, almost as if they are borrowing from the name of God. In other words, to use I in the English language, or I am yo, right, in Spanish, to use theos, when we start out every sentence, we are assuming a central, pure, principle-based entity that doesn't exist. So therefore, no language then can be seen as a coherent thought. So we are ironically expressing and judging coherence with an assumed center or core that we sacrifice, sabotage, skirt around, talk around. It's at every center of every occult ritual and mechanism. It's why the heinous things are happening when we look at Epstein, but it stretches way far back to Michael Aquino and monarch daycare centers, and goes back much further than that when we look at Göbekli Tepe, and we look at all these little towns where human sacrifice and rituals and sex magic, it's always been there, right? And when we look at that, they're borrowing from not purity, but from innocence. So even at the heart, there's supposed to be a vying for, a hunger, a thirst, a need to return back to this Gnostic sense, to return back to a pure state. But the big cover-up is that the pure state never existed in the first place. And that right there only means something transactionally as the main premise to a value. And that's why you see very high IQ, very high intelligent, and high emotional quotient thinkers and processors and experiencers commit suicide. And it just baffles people. And they think, oh, there was some sort of conspiracy. They reach this state where nihilistically they realize that not only does nothing amount to nothing, and this sort of nihilistic nothingness, right? You can't even go there to this emo, emotional sort of downtrodden state and stay there, right? Not only is that not in play, but the fact that if you're going to survive usury, blaming, entropy, chaos, a white trash Christmas party has to stay in play. And that is what ends up making people that have all this capacity and ability to just off themselves right there.